Hello everyone and welcome back to another video tutorial. In this video tutorial, I will show you how to craft a basic skirt sloper or pattern. This tutorial is for a skirt with a single dart on the front and back pattern. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you'll be notified when new video tutorials are uploaded. Leave your comment down below in the comment section. Share and like this video by clicking on the thumbs up icon. Thank you. The starting point for any drafting project is knowing the needed measurements, and the needed measurements are the following. The next segment in this tutorial is showing how to take the needed measurements on a real body, so that you will get a better understanding of the reference point of each needed measurements. The waist measurement is a measurement that can be obtained or taken two ways. One is to take the waist circumference, add some ease, then divide by 4. This method is appropriate for someone who relatively measures about the same in the front and back. Measure half of the waist at the front from side seam to side seam, then divide by 2. This method is more accurate for a person that carries more weight in the stomach, like an apple-shaped person. And for the back, measure from side seam to side seam, then divide by 2. Again, this method is more accurate for an apple-shaped person. I show two ways of taking the waist measurement so that you can have the option of using whichever method you're most comfortable with, and to also have the option to use which one that will be more applicable depending on the person you're measuring. The next measurement is the hip depth. With an elastic band or rope tied around the waist and hip, measure the vertical length from waist to hip point. The next measurement is the hip circumference. This also is a measurement that can be obtained or taken two ways. One is to take the hip circumference, add some ease, then divide by 4. This method is accurate for someone who relatively measures about the same in the front and back. Measure half of the hip at the front from side seam to side seam, then divide by 2. This method is more accurate for someone that carries more weight at the back or buttocks than the front. And for the back measurement, measure from side seam to side seam, then divide by 2. Again, this measurement is more accurate for someone that carries more weight in the back or buttocks. Again, I show two ways of taking the hip measurement so that you can have the option of using whichever method you're more comfortable with, and to also have the option to use which one that will be more applicable depending on the person you're measuring. The last measurement is the skirt length. Measure from the waist to your desired length. This measurement applies to both the front and back skirt. Since I couldn't take this measurement on myself, I had to demonstrate it on a dress form. So I started out drafting my skirt, and I realized that the side seam would be so side by side that I wouldn't have any room to add the seam allowance. So I started all over again. Starting over. To begin, make sure that all the edges of your drafting paper are straight and equal, meaning that both the vertical and horizontal edges are straight and equal. Then draw a 1-inch line on the vertical ends of the paper that is the measurement of your skirt length plus 3 to 4 inches extra. To determine how wide your paper should be, the calculation is hip circumference plus 2-inch ease divided by 2 plus 6 inches extra. You will need that 6-inch extra because you will need room for the 1-inch line at the vertical edges of the paper and also to have room at the side seam of the skirt to add the 1/2 inch seam allowance. This will all make sense at the end when I add the 1/2 inch seam allowance to the skirt sloper. Next, from the top edge of the paper, come down 2 inches and draw a line across. That line will represent the waistline. The previous calculation we did was to determine how wide the paper should be. The next calculation is to determine how wide the skirt rectangle should be. Meaning we need to determine how wide the rectangle that will represent the front and the back of the skirt pattern will be. Using my example, I measured 10.5 inches from one side of the skirt from the 1-inch line and 10.5 inches from the other side of the skirt from the 1-inch line. The calculation for this is hip circumference plus 2 inches of ease divided by 4. Then from those 2 points, draw a straight line down that will represent the skirt side seam. Now you can see that one rectangle measures 10.5 and the other one measures 10.5, and the space between will be used to draw the 1/2 inch seam allowance for the side seam. From the corner of the waistline and the 1-inch line, measure down the length of your hip depth. My hip depth is 8.25. From that point, draw a line across with an L ruler. An L ruler helps in drawing a straight line across. If you don't have an L ruler, measure down your hip depth on all the vertical lines and then use a straight ruler to connect all the points. The next step is to draft the waist, the dart, and the side seam, and they are all interdependent. And to do this, we will need to do some calculations. I'm going to use my stat as an example to show you how the calculation is done.